She sat in silence, her face turned toward the van's fogged window, as Harbor City drifted past in fragments of slate-gray water and rusted docks. Why did it feel more like exile than arrival? The others who came to Meridian Naval Academy stepped through its gates like inheritors of destiny. She, Raven Claremont, entered like someone already judged, already dismissed, before she'd even saluted once. "First time?" the driver asked, glancing at her in the rear view. A petty officer with creased lines across his weathered face, he seemed less interested in the answer and more in reading the silence that followed it. "Yes, sir." Her reply was polite, steady, but inside she wondered how many more times she'd have to endure that question, that soft hint of disbelief. First time at sea. First time away from home. First time under a banner of discipline older than the country itself. First time, and yet, too many people had already decided what she was and what she was. The van slowed, rolling past iron gates into the academy grounds. The fog thickened, curling around red brick halls that loomed like monuments to tradition, and at the highest point of the campus stood Bancroft Hall. "That's where you'll be living," the driver said, nodding toward its austere facade. "For years, assuming you make it through plebe." Assuming. That word had a way of clinging like a burr. It always came when she introduced herself, when her modest background met their sharpened expectations. Assuming she was strong enough. Assuming she wouldn't break. Assuming she belonged. Raven stepped out into the courtyard carrying only one worn duffel bag. Around her, families clustered in proud, tearful knots, fathers straightening jackets, mothers brushing lint from sleeves, siblings taking photographs. She had no one waiting, just her boots on the stone path, her breath clouding in the morning air. "You must be Claremont," a voice called. Raven turned to find a cadet with auburn hair and bright green eyes, posture already squared with academy discipline. "Meadow Hartwell, your roommate." Raven extended a hand. "Sorry I'm late, bus from Portland broke down twice." "Bus?" Meadow tilted her head. Around them, sleek sedans and private SUVs idled with family crests on the license plates. "Most people don't arrive that way." Raven smiled faintly. "Most people are me." They climbed marble stairs under the gaze of portraits. Generals, admirals, the kinds of names children here had grown up memorizing. Raven walked beneath their eyes and wondered if any of them had started with only a bus ticket and a second-hand jacket. "Careful around Chadwick Pettin," Meadow murmured as they passed a door buzzing with laughter. "Congressman's son, grandson of an admiral, he doesn't like competition." Almost on cue, he emerged, 6 feet of perfect posture and money-polished confidence. He looked Raven up and down, eyes landing on her scuffed bag, her plain uniform. "Scholarship Day." His smirk carried the weight of someone certain the world bent toward his name. "Tell me, Claremont, where exactly did they scrape you up from?" "Vermont." The word was quiet but deliberate. He repeated it as though it tasted bitter. "A farmer's daughter then, mother working retail. You're here to prove that sweat conquers breeding. Is that it?" The chuckles from his entourage rang like rehearsed applause. Raven didn't flinch. She simply met his gaze, calm, unblinking. Something in that silence made him falter for the briefest heartbeat, though arrogance quickly closed the gap. "We'll see how long that quiet act lasts when the real training begins," he muttered. But a sharper voice cut through the air before he could say more. "Room inspections, 20 minutes." Lieutenant Commander Georgiana Blackstone strode past, black hair pulled taut, ribbons gleaming on her chest. Her eyes scanned Raven, paused longer than necessary, then moved on. "Yes, ma'am," Chadwick answered, his swagger folding briefly into obedience. Inside their room, Meadow unpacked with practiced ease. Raven moved with quiet precision, folding clothes, placing books, arranging her space so efficiently it looked less like a new arrival and more like someone who'd lived out of rucksacks before. "You pack like this isn't your first time," Meadow observed. Summer camp, Raven said, but her eyes flicked outside. Down in the courtyard, a maintenance worker adjusted a camera on the light pole. Nothing unusual, except for the tool in his hand and the angle he'd chosen. Most cadets wouldn't notice. Raven noticed. Old habits whispered warnings she'd promised herself she wouldn't hear anymore. That afternoon, the cadets were marched to the training vessel, the USS Intrepid, her steel worn but proud. Chief Petty Officer Brennan, voice forged by Atlantic storms, barked orders about lines and knots, about balance on unsteady decks. Chadwick tied his knots flawlessly, muscle memory from summers on family yachts. His grin invited applause, and he got it. Raven worked in silence at the stern, her hands moving with a confidence that betrayed more than curiosity. She looped, coiled, tested, secured, not wasting a single gesture. When she finished, she didn't boast. She simply helped the one still struggling, her touch steady, never condescending. Chief Brennan's sharp eyes narrowed. "Claremont, show me a Zeppelin bend." She selected the lines without hesitation. Fingers flew, not completed in less than 30 seconds. Brennan tugged, tested, perfect. "Interesting," he murmured. "Quick learner," Raven replied, as though that explained everything. But Blackstone, watching from the dock, made a note on her tablet. Her eyes lingered, too advanced, too precise, too much awareness for a supposed first-year cadet. That night, Raven sat by the window of Bancroft Hall, the glow of Port Elizabeth beyond the gates. Normal lives, normal people. How distant that world already felt. "You think we'll make it?" Meadow asked, voice soft from her bunk. Raven didn't answer right away. She touched the inside of her pocket where a small, worn patch hid, colors faded, words stitched in secrecy. "Iron Wolf." "I think we're all going to be tested in ways we don't expect," she said. Then quieter, "especially me." She lay down but didn't sleep easily. Somewhere beneath the Academy's layers of tradition and arrogance, something moved unseen. The camera, the angles, the odd details others missed. And in her chest that old dread stirred. Her past wasn't gone, it was circling, waiting. Fog pressed against the windows. The first day at Meridian Naval Academy closed with secrets unspoken, tensions planted like mines. And Raven Claremont, dismissed by some as just another cadet, listened to the silence and knew this was only the beginning. Why did Professor Isadora Fairfax's words land heavier than the rest? Maybe it was the way she carried herself, as though she'd seen wars no textbook could describe. Or maybe it was the quiet conviction in her eyes, the kind that made young cadets question their own certainty. "You will investigate a historical case study," she announced to the class, her voice calm but edged with authority. "Not to find easy answers, but to wrestle with the uncomfortable reality that good people sometimes face impossible choices." The lecture hall stilled. Some cadets leaned forward eagerly, already thinking about how they might impress. Others slouched, certain ethics was the softest course they'd take. Chadwick Pettin naturally sat front and center. "Professor," he said smoothly, "isn't it simple? Follow orders, protect the flag, do what's right." A flicker of a smile touched Fairfax's mouth. "Then perhaps you'd like to examine the My Lai incident. Tell us afterward if clarity survives contact with reality." The room shifted. A test wrapped inside an assignment. Chadwick's confidence cracked for the briefest second. Names were read aloud, pairings assigned with a deliberate hand. When she reached Raven, Professor Fairfax paused. "Claremont, you'll partner with Merrick Ashworth." The studious boy with wire-rimmed glasses straightened, intrigued. "Operation Neptune Spear," Fairfax continued. "Analyze the ethical implications of targeted elimination versus capture and trial." Merrick turned, eyes bright with curiosity. "That operation fascinating." He leaned toward Raven. "Do you realize the dimensions of that case? International law, sovereignty, collateral damage, the balance between justice and vengeance." Raven nodded slowly, scribbling notes in handwriting precise enough to look military. And precedent. What happens when extraordinary methods become routine? Merrick blinked. Most cadets barely grasped the headlines. She was already dissecting consequences. "You've studied this before?" he asked. "I read a lot," she said simply. But behind her calm reply, her pulse flickered once. She remembered more than reading. She remembered the sound of rotors in darkness, the way decisions snapped down like blades, impossible choices dressed as orders. By evening, the two sat in the academy's library, documents spread across a polished mahogany table. Merrick analyzed like a mathematician, lines of logic weaving across the page. Raven absorbed with quiet intensity, eyes flicking not only over the words but the absences between them, the silences no report admitted. "The more I study," Merrick said, adjusting his glasses, "the less straightforward it becomes. Was execution justice, or the beginning of something more dangerous?" Raven traced her pen across a margin, writing carefully. "Sometimes necessity eats law alive." Before she could explain, her academy-issued tablet vibrated with a soft chime. A message. She opened it casually, expecting scheduling notes. Instead, her eyes froze. 3 lines of numbers and letters. No context. No sender she recognized, but she knew the format, old codes, the kind never meant to surface again. Her breath slowed. Her training reasserted itself. Memorize, delete, clear the cache. "Everything all right?" Merrick asked, catching the faintest shift in her posture. "Just the training schedule," she said lightly. But inside, alarms screamed. Someone had pierced the academy system to reach her, someone who knew who she really was. As they left the library, Raven cataloged the world with sharpened precision. Windows glowing, cadets moving in 2s and 3s, shadows where there shouldn't be. Her cover wasn't just thin now, it was porous. Across campus, Captain Maximilian Cross sat in his office, reviewing reports. A man forged in command, not politics. He carried the weariness of storms weathered both literal and human. Lieutenant Commander Blackstone entered with her tablet. "Sir, there's one cadet whose file doesn't match performance." Claremont, Cross's eyes narrowed. Yes, officially no military background. Yet she demonstrates advanced seamanship, combat awareness, even medical competence. Chief Brennan has noticed it too. Cross was silent for a long time, the weight of command heavy in his gaze. Finally, "Keep watching her, carefully." When Blackstone left, he sent a secure message to higher headquarters. He needed answers the academy couldn't provide. Back in her dorm, Raven lay awake, eyes on the ceiling. Meadow breathed steadily in the opposite bunk, unaware. Raven's hand touched the pocket where the patch still lay hidden. Iron Wolf. The code from earlier repeated in her mind like a ghost. If it had reached her here, it meant the game had shifted. Either her cover was compromised, or the mission had changed. The next day brought storm clouds over Chesapeake Bay. The cadets assembled aboard the USS, intrepid for their first major exercise. Waves rose, wind howled. Chief Brennan barked orders through salt spray. "Man overboard drill, let's see if you're sailors or seasick tourists." Chadwick took charge, his voice booming. He tied knots with flair, steered his team with confidence born of privilege. But Raven noticed the way his knuckles whitened on the rail. The ocean didn't care about lineage. Merrick hunched over navigation charts, brow furrowed. "The calculations aren't matching the GPS." "Factor tidal flow," Raven murmured. Her eyes tracked the waves. "The bay funnels here, speeds the current." He tested, correct. His astonishment showed. "That's advanced coastal navigation. Where did you learn that?" She smiled faintly. "Lucky guess." But then movement off the starboard bow. A fishing vessel, or was it? Too clean, wrong antenna, no gear visible. The drill began. Weighted dummy into the water. Teams Alpha and Bravo racing to recover. Alpha, led by Chadwick, moved smoothly, privilege polished into practice, lines in water swimmer dispatched. Bravo faltered, their swimmer Jasper misjudged, caught in a stronger current. His strokes turned frantic, his body slipped under. "He's drowning," Meadow screamed. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Willow Ashford, Bravo's coordinator, stood paralyzed. Textbook answers vanished in the face of real danger. Raven moved. Jacket stripped, harness off, she dove cleanly into the freezing bay. The water crushed her chest. Her body shifted into rhythm, strokes smooth, efficient, unhesitating. She reached Jasper just as he sank again. "Stop fighting," she commanded, voice cutting through his panic. She locked him into a textbook rescue hold, except it wasn't textbook. It was muscle memory from missions no cadet should have lived. She dragged him back, lungs burning, riding the waves instead of resisting. "Breathe now, hold, breathe." Deckhands hauled them aboard. Raven didn't pause. She rolled Jasper onto his side, checked airway, pulse, breathing. Her hands worked with professional speed, stabilizing, warming. Chief Brennan crouched, astonished. "Where did you learn that level of emergency response?" "Basic lifeguard," she said flatly. But her movements betrayed more. Combat medic training, cold water protocols, the kind of knowledge lives depended on in war zones. Around them, cadets stared, respect mixing with suspicion. Even Chadwick's smirk faltered. "Interesting skills for a farmer's daughter," he muttered. That night, Blackstone filed her report with Cross. Her swimming technique was military standard. Her medical response advanced. "I don't buy the Vermont story." Cross's jaw tightened. "Then she isn't who she says she is. Find out who she really is." But Raven already knew the truth. In her room, she opened her tablet, entered codes long dormant. The message she sent was short but final, cover compromised, surveillance detected, requesting guidance. The reply came almost instantly. "Maintain position. Trust no one. Iron Wolf protocols active." The words chilled her. Iron Wolf, the identity she thought she'd buried, now unearthed. She deleted the message, closed her eyes. Outside, fog rolled back over the academy, muffling the grounds. Whatever game had begun, it was no longer training. It was war in disguise, and every cadet on campus had just become a pawn on a board they couldn't see. Why did the war games feel different this year? The academy had held them for decades, yet attention hung in the air like static before lightning. Cadets sharpened their gear, painted their faces, checked laser sim rounds that simulated real fire. But Raven Claremont felt something heavier pressing on her chest. Maybe it was because she'd already glimpsed the game behind the game, the fishing vessel, the coded message, the quiet orders only she could read, Iron Wolf protocols active. At 800 sharp, Captain Cross addressed the cadets in the leadership center. His voice was clipped, formal, the tone of someone hiding concern behind discipline. "All safety protocols remain in effect. This is training, not recreation. Treat it with respect or you'll face removal." The cadets nodded, buzzing with nervous energy. For most of them, this was the first chance to play at being real officers. For Raven, it was the first chance to measure which of them might survive if the play turned real. Alpha Team, commanded by Chadwick Pettin, bristled with cocky confidence. Expensive prep school training, years of simulations, friends chosen like pawns on a chessboard. Bravo, under Brighton Whitmore, moved with steady discipline. Sons and daughters of enlisted sailors, practical and unpretentious. Charlie, commanded by Merrick Ashworth, looked less like a squad and more like a tactical debate group. His mind calculated probabilities faster than most cadets could tie boots. Delta, Raven's team, fell under Griffin Clearwater, an engineering cadet whose brain ran on numbers and gears. She was officially tactical advisor. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Initial phase begins at 800, Chief Brennan explained, pointing at the tactical map. Alpha and Bravo assault. Charlie and Delta defend. 2 hours. Roles reverse. As cadets dispersed, Willow Ashford slipped beside Raven, quiet as always. Her green eyes studied the assignments. Interesting distribution, she whispered. Like they're testing individuals, not just strategies. Petton gets the glory charge. Brighton leads methodical resistance. And you, she hesitated. You're placed where they need unconventional thinking. Raven glanced at her. And you think I'm unconventional? I think you don't move like the rest of us, Willow said softly. You see angles others miss. Before Raven could reply, her radio crackled. A calm, professional voice. Delta team, be advised of equipment malfunction in your sector. Maintenance personnel inbound. Clearwater responded automatically. Roger. But Raven caught his sleeve. Wait, her tone froze him mid-step. That transmission sounded wrong. He frowned. What do you mean? The terminology, civilian phrasing, accent off, and no maintenance was scheduled. She keyed her radio. Control, confirm maintenance authorization for Delta. Silence. Then Captain Cross's voice tense. Negative, no maintenance authorized. Report unauthorized presence immediately. The war game ended in that instant. Willow's voice cracked. Movement east perimeter, 3 men, civilians. Raven slid into a crouch, heart rate steady, mind shifting into survival math. Clearwater, put your team in cover. Willow, observe, I'll check it. That's not your call, Clearwater hissed. Command it if you want. Survive it if you can, Raven answered, already moving. Through trees and fog she crept forward. The intruders carried equipment too sophisticated for casual trespass. One man scanned with advanced optics. Another handled electronic gear, surveillance disruptors. Their formation, their movement, professional. Delta to control, Raven whispered. 3 hostiles attempting perimeter breach, armed with advanced surveillance equipment. Cross's voice snapped back. All teams abort exercise. Security alert level red. This is not a drill. But Alpha Team was already in the open. Their assigned route ran straight into the intruder's path. Alpha, divert west, Raven radioed. You'll walk into hostile contact. Chadwick's voice oozed arrogance. Delta has no authority over Alpha. We'll proceed. Chadwick, listen to me. They're armed. But it was too late. Shouting erupted. Through her glasses, Raven saw Alpha pinned, weapons aimed at cadet chests. Chadwick's arrogance evaporated. His bravado couldn't rewrite the fear in his eyes. One intruder barked, "Stay down, don't move." But Chadwick, whether out of courage or stupidity, rolled toward cover trying to activate his beacon. It might have worked in a controlled simulation. In reality, it nearly got him killed. The intruder raised his weapon. Raven moved before thought. She sprinted low and fast, launched herself in a dive that smashed into the gunman. They tumbled across dirt and leaves. His strength was real, practiced, but hers was sharper, recent, desperate. She stripped the weapon, twisted his arm, pinned him before he could cry out. "Don't move," she ordered, voice carrying a weight no cadet should possess. The clearing froze. Cadets stared. Even the intruders hesitated at the sight of her stance, her hands holding the rifle with professional confidence. Chadwick's mouth hung open. "Who the hell are you?" Before Raven could answer, sirens blared. Academy security stormed the clearing, weapons drawn. Chief Brennan led them, his face storm-dark. Raven lowered the rifle slowly, her breathing steady. 3 hostiles, no cadet casualties. Brennan's eyes swept over her, then lingered. "Outstanding work, Cadet." He didn't finish the thought, but suspicion darkened his gaze. Lieutenant Commander Blackstone arrived, tablet in hand. "Sir, there's more. Anonymous allegations filed with Naval Inspector General, claims of corruption in admissions, grade manipulation, scholarships falsified." Murmurs rippled. Cadets shifted, eyes darting at one another. Captain Cross's expression hardened. Professor Fairfax, you'll conduct a preliminary investigation. Use Claremont as your assistant." The order rang like a gavel. Everyone heard it. Raven, the mystery. Raven, the quiet scholarship girl. Raven, now tied directly to an investigation that could destroy reputations. As the crowd dispersed, Chadwick fell into step beside her. His arrogance had been shattered. In its place stood something raw, unpolished. "You saved my life," he said quietly, "and I've been an ass." His voice broke around the admission. "I don't understand what you are, Claremont, but whatever you need, you have it." Raven said nothing. She simply walked, her silence heavier than any speech. Ahead, a shadow leaned against the administration building. A man with the posture of special operations. Commander Thorne Sterling. His eyes met Raven. Recognition passed like a coded signal. Then he disappeared inside. Raven's pulse thudded once in her ears. She knew what his presence meant. The Academy thought this was still training, still rumor, but she could read the truth in Sterling's step. This wasn't about cadet rivalries or academic honor anymore. This was the beginning of war, hidden in plain sight. What did it mean to be trusted by someone who didn't know the truth? Raven asked herself that question as she stood outside Professor Fairfax's office the next morning, the fog still clinging to the Academy grounds. Cadets hurried past in uniforms pressed sharp, voices tight with gossip about the security breach, about the rumors of corruption, about the mysterious rescue the night before. Every whisper curled toward her name. Inside, Professor Fairfax gestured for her to close the door. The office smelled faintly of old books and salt air drifting from Memorial Garden beyond the window. Walls lined with shelves bore the weight of centuries of war, ethics, strategy, history. And yet, Fairfax herself radiated the kind of calm that made Raven's pulse slow despite the storm inside her chest. "Sit," the professor said, switching on a small device that scrambled any attempt at audio surveillance. Her voice lowered. "What we're about to discuss leaves this room only in reports I authorize. Is that understood?" "Yes, ma'am." Fairfax laid out a file thick with photocopied documents, financial records, and intercepted communications. "The allegations we received, they are not minor. Scholarship funds diverted, admissions altered, evaluations falsified. It's systematic, deliberate, and it undermines everything this institution claims to stand for." Raven leafed through the pages, her trained eye catching what others might miss. Patterns, timelines, the invisible hands behind the curtain. "Who compiled this?" she asked. "That's what troubles me," Fairfax replied. "The evidence is too precise. Whoever gathered it had inside access or professional intelligence capabilities." Her gaze sharpened, studying Raven as if testing her with the weight of that implication. Raven didn't flinch. She kept her voice steady. "What do you need me to do?" "Trace the money. Start with scholarship distributions over the last 3 years. Find patterns that don't match the stated criteria." Fairfax slid a secure tablet across the desk. "Look especially at cadets who come from families wealthy enough not to need assistance." Raven accepted it with a nod, but inside, something coiled tighter. She wasn't being asked to play cadet anymore. She was being asked to be what she already was. As she worked through the data, her instincts confirmed what her training told her to expect. Wealthy cadets receiving aid. Promising candidates from poor families rejected for absurd reasons. A network designed not for fairness, but for manipulation. "This isn't random," Raven murmured. "It's structured, like someone's curating a list." Fairfax leaned closer. "A list of what?" "Of officers who can be compromised later. Buy their way in now, control them when they wear stars." The silence in the room thickened. A knock broke it. The door opened to admit Commander Thorne Sterling, his presence shifting the air immediately. He nodded to Fairfax, then to Raven, though his eyes carried the weight of recognition that others couldn't decode. "Captain Cross asked me to coordinate the security aspects," Sterling said formally. Then more pointedly to Raven, "We need to discuss certain technical matters." Fairfax, perceptive as ever, allowed it. "Don't be long, we've only just begun." In a secured conference room, Sterling shut the door and relaxed slightly, though his tone remained grave. "Your cover is gone, Iron Wolf. Too many saw what you did in that clearing. Too many questions about who you are." Raven's jaw tightened. "Abort or adapt?" "Adapt," he said. "The corruption isn't just greed. We've confirmed foreign intelligence is tied to it. Cadets are being positioned as long-term assets, compromised before they ever commission. This isn't about favoritism, it's infiltration." The word sank like lead. She suspected it. Hearing it confirmed was worse. "How deep?" she asked. "Deep enough that even Cross may not know who's working against him. Deep enough that every move from here risks exposure." He slid a disguised device into her hand, appearing to be a standard Academy tablet. "Emergency protocols are live. If this escalates beyond containment, extraction is authorized." Raven weighed the tablet in her hand, its weight heavier than steel. Extraction meant failure. It meant leaving Meridian to rot. She wasn't ready to accept that. Back in Fairfax's office, the professor had unearthed more. "Look here," she said, pointing at side-by-side evaluations. "Merrick Ashworth's records show brilliance, yet he's been marked down repeatedly. Comments don't match his work, and all the signatures point to Lieutenant Commander Blackstone." Raven frowned. "Her style doesn't match. Someone's using her authorization." "Which means either she's involved, or someone wants her discredited," Fairfax said grimly. Before they could continue, shouts echoed from the courtyard. Cadets clustering, voices rising. Fairfax moved to the window, Raven beside her. At the fountain stood Chadwick Petton, his face pale, his voice raw. "You want the truth," he shouted. "My scholarship was falsified, my family lied, I didn't even know." The crowd rippled with gasps. Some cadets looked betrayed, others defensive. "How many of us are here under false pretenses?" Brighton Whitmore demanded, stepping forward, his voice heavy with responsibility. A quiet voice answered, Willow Ashford. She stepped from the crowd, tablet in hand. "I've been tracing the files. The corruption is bigger than one family. Every manipulated scholarship is tied to altered evaluations, and those evaluations push people into leadership tracks, into access to classified information." She projected the web across the courtyard, connections lit like veins under skin. "They're not just buying seats. They're planting vulnerabilities," Willow said, her voice trembling but clear. The crowd erupted. Anger, fear, betrayal, lines drawn between privilege and merit. Raven's device vibrated in her pocket. A message from Sterling, Academy lockdown imminent. External threats detected. Protect the evidence. The PA system blared, Captain Cross's voice hard. "This is not a drill. All cadets to quarters. Academy lockdown protocols are in effect." Panic surged. Security forces moved in. Raven's eyes swept the crowd and found Willow, clutching her tablet like a lifeline. "Give me everything you've got," Raven said, pushing through bodies to reach her. Willow's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I'm not really a cadet," Raven said, voice low but firm. "And what you've uncovered, it isn't just corruption, it's national security." The words landed like a hammer. Willow stared, realization dawning. Around them, the courtyard fractured, cadets shouting, friendships tearing, trust unraveling. The academy itself seemed to tilt under the weight of revelation. And somewhere in the fog outside the gates, forces moved that cared nothing about honor codes or naval traditions. Forces that wanted one thing, the evidence in Willow's trembling hands. Raven reached out, steadying her. "Stay close to me. Whatever comes next, you can't face it alone." The younger cadet nodded once, her fear hidden beneath a quiet resolve. Above them, the academy bell tolled, echoing across the campus like a warning. The war wasn't coming, It was already here. Why did the academy suddenly feel less like a school and more like a cage? The klaxon blared, red lights strobing against the gray stone halls as cadets scrambled toward their quarters. Raven moved in the flow but not of it, her mind running two battles at once, the one everyone saw and the one only she understood. Lockdown, not a drill. That meant the threat was inside the gates. She guided Willow Ashford through the surge, the younger cadet clutching her tablet like a life preserver. Meadow Hartwell followed close, pale but resolute, her voice trembling. They're saying it's a bomb threat. Others say armed intruders. No, Raven said flatly, eyes scanning doorways, angles, escape routes. This isn't about panic, it's about silencing. Willow stumbled at the word. Silencing who? You, Raven answered. You hold the evidence. They reached the stairwell when the first commotion broke. Shouts, the thud of boots, the unmistakable crack of a stun round discharging. Cadets froze in place, fear paralyzing them. Move, Raven barked, her voice sharper than any officer's. The tone cut through hesitation. Instinctively they obeyed. In the chaos, Chadwick Petton appeared, face pale, arrogance stripped away by reality. Claremont, what's happening? Security just dragged Brighton's squad out at gunpoint. Raven seized his arm, voice low and fierce. Listen carefully. Not everyone in uniform is your ally. Choose who you trust and do it fast. He hesitated, the old arrogance fighting with newfound fear. Then, with a nod, he fell into step. The four of them ducked into a storage room, the heavy door muffling the alarm. For a moment, only their ragged breathing filled the space. Willow's hands shook as she powered up the tablet, displaying the web of corrupted files. If they find this. They will, Raven said, kneeling to check vents, corners, lines of sight. Unless we move first. Meadow pressed her back to the wall. You're not a normal cadet, are you? The silence stretched before Raven answered. No, I was placed here, embedded, to observe, to intercept threats before they reached the fleet, and now the threats are already here. Willow's eyes widened. Your intelligence. Raven didn't confirm, didn't deny, she only said, right now that makes me a target too. Outside, boots thundered past. Voices barked orders. Some cadets shouted protests, dragged away for reasons they didn't understand. Chadwick's jaw clenched. So what do we do, hide or fight? Neither, Raven said. We outthink them. Whoever's behind this expects chaos. We give them something else. She turned to Willow. How portable is the evidence? Encrypted, cloud stored, but this tablet holds the keys. Then we keep it moving, Raven decided. Never let them corner us with it. Chadwick gave a bitter laugh. You sound like you've done this before. Her eyes flicked to his, steady, unyielding. I have. The room stilled. The weight of that truth settled over them. A sharp knock rattled the door. Delta Squad, open up, security sweep. Raven motioned silence, hand raised. The knock came again, harder this time. She whispered, not Academy security, their cadence is wrong. The group stiffened. Raven moved silently to the door, pressing her ear against it. A faint metallic scrape followed, the sound of a lock pick. No more time. She drew a screwdriver from a maintenance kit in the corner, her body shifting into readiness. When the door cracked open, she struck swift, efficient, disabling the intruder with a single blow to the wrist, sending his weapon clattering. Chaos erupted. Chadwick lunged, Meadow screamed, Willow clutched the tablet. Raven subdued the man with a joint lock, pressing him to the floor. Who sent you? She demanded, voice low but lethal. The man hissed in accented English. Too late. The academy is already burning from within. Before she could press further, footsteps closed in from the hall. Reinforcements. Raven dragged the cadets out through the opposite door, down a service stairwell into the lower levels. The air grew damp, heavy with the smell of the bay. They emerged into a maintenance corridor near the docks. Why here? Chadwick asked, panting. Because water is escape, Raven said, and they won't expect us to move toward it. But even as she said it, she knew escape wasn't the mission. Protecting the evidence was. Buying time was. They slipped into a boathouse, shadows dancing across the old wooden beams. Raven scanned the horizon. Patrol boats cruised the perimeter, their lights sweeping the water. Willow clutched her tablet tighter. If they shut down the network, I lose the cloud backup. This is the only copy. Raven's stomach tightened. A single device, a single lifeline. If it was captured, everything fell. Meadow stepped forward, surprising them all. Her voice, usually soft, rang steady. Then split it. 2 drives, 2 carriers, double the chance it survives. Raven's eyes met hers. In that moment she saw steel beneath the quiet exterior. She nodded. Do it. Minutes later they had 2 encrypted drives. Raven slipped one into her jacket. Willow kept the other. The boathouse door creaked. Another figure entered, Professor Fairfax, her face pale in the dim light. I thought you might come here, she said, voice trembling. They've sealed the upper campus. Captain Cross is under heavy guard. Lieutenant Commander Blackstone arrested. What? Meadow gasped. Fairfax's eyes burned. She tried to expose the system logs. They silenced her. Chadwick's fists clenched. This is madness. No, Raven said grimly. This is strategy. Remove the truth-tellers. Control the narrative. And when it's over, all anyone will remember is that cadets rioted during lockdown. Fairfax handed Raven a folded slip of paper. Coordinates. A safe contact. He can get you off the grounds if it comes to that. Raven tucked it away. But her heart rebelled at the thought of abandoning the academy, the cadets who didn't even understand the war being fought in their name. Professor, she said, you should come with us. Fairfax shook her head. My place is here. I can slow them down, confuse their trail, but you're the one they fear. For a moment silence stretched. The weight of sacrifice lay thick. Finally Raven nodded. Then hold the line. The professor's eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. Go, and remember, honor isn't in the oath we take. It's in the choices we make when no one's watching. The cadets slipped into the night, shadows among shadows. The academy loomed behind them, a fortress turned battlefield, its legacy cracking under the weight of betrayal. Raven led them toward the seawall, every step calculated, every instinct burning. Inside she felt the fracture growing wider, the split between who she was supposed to be and who she really was, between cadet and operative, between student and Iron Wolf. And though she didn't say it aloud, one truth burned in her chest. There would be no going back. Why did night always feel louder in silence? The academy grounds, usually alive with cadets drilling, laughing, shouting commands, now lay smothered under the weight of lockdown. Floodlights swept across parade fields, shadows stretched long and strange, and somewhere in the distance, a foghorn moaned from the bay like a warning from the deep. Raven Claremont crouched near the seawall with Willow, Meadow, and Chadwick pressed close behind her. The encrypted drives burned in her jacket, and Willow's hands like hidden embers, small, fragile things carrying the power to expose or bury the truth forever. Boots echoed in the courtyard above them. Voices carried, authoritative, calm, but too calm, not the clipped tones of academy security. These men moved differently, spoke differently. Professionals, outsiders. Meadow whispered, they're not even trying to hide it now. They don't need to, Raven murmured. They think the lockdown has already silenced the story. Her eyes tracked the patrols, calculating patterns, pauses, lines of sight. In her mind, the academy transformed from stone and tradition into a map of choke points and ambushes. Chadwick shifted uneasily, his voice tight. I can't believe my name tied to this. My father, my family, they'll say I was part of it. Raven's eyes flicked toward him. Then prove them wrong. Tonight isn't about where you came from. It's about what you choose now. His throat worked, swallowing the weight of her words. The group slipped into an old drainage culvert leading toward the memorial grove. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and rust. Water dripped in slow rhythms, masking their steps. Willow clutched the tablet drive close, her voice barely audible. "What happens if we can't get this out?" "Then it dies here," Raven said softly. "And so do the futures of everyone who thought this place stood for honor." Silence stretched. Even Meadow, usually quick with reassurance, stayed quiet. They emerged into the grove, marble statues rising pale in the floodlight glow. The names of the fallen etched in stone seemed to watch them pass. Raven slowed, her eyes drawn to a plaque that caught the light, Admiral Elias Claremont, her grandfather. She froze, breath catching. Meadow noticed, "Is that family?" Raven forced her voice steady. "He believed service was the only legacy worth leaving. I never thought I'd walk past his name like this." For a heartbeat, her facade cracked. The operative vanished and the granddaughter stood in her place, small and uncertain under the weight of carved stone. But the moment passed. She turned away, mask restored. Movement ahead snapped her back into the present. Two men in unmarked gear, sweeping the grove with tactical flashlights. Their weapons weren't Academy issue. Raven pulled the others into cover. "Stay low, no noise." The patrol drew closer, light beams cutting across the statues. One beam swept within inches of Chadwick's face. He froze, every muscle trembling. The operative in Raven wanted to eliminate the threat quickly, decisively. But the cadet in her, the cover, the facade, urged patience. If she revealed too much skill, the questions would multiply. She chose restraint, waited. The men passed. Only then did she exhale, slow and measured. Willow's voice shook. "How do you stay that calm?" Raven's reply was quiet, almost a confession. "I don't, I just move anyway." They pressed on, slipping into the old armory near the eastern wall. Dust lay thick on forgotten crates. The smell of oil and rust hung heavy. Raven scanned the racks, training rifles, decommissioned gear. Nothing lethal, but enough to stage a defense if needed. "Take what you can use," she ordered. Chadwick grabbed a baton, testing its weight. Meadow found a flare gun. Willow hesitated, hands hovering over a training pistol. Raven guided her gently. "You don't have to carry it." Willow shook her head, eyes hardening. "I do." She tucked it into her belt, her jaw set with quiet resolve. Suddenly, radios crackled outside. Orders barked in clipped tones. Raven caught fragments. "Sector 4, secure the evidence, priority 1." Her blood chilled. They weren't after the Academy, they were after the drives. "Move," she whispered. They slipped out the back, but the net was tightening. Floodlights cut across the armory walls. Shadows of advancing figures stretched long across the ground. "Split," Raven ordered. "Pairs, Willow with me, Meadow with Chadwick, 2 drives, 2 paths. If one's caught, the other might make it." Meadow's eyes widened in protest, but Raven's stare silenced her. This wasn't a debate, it was survival. The groups broke apart, Raven dragging Willow into the maze of maintenance sheds, while Meadow and Chadwick bolted toward the chapel. Shouts erupted behind them, flashlights pierced the dark. Raven and Willow ducked into a shed, crouching among coils of rope and tarps. Willow's breaths came fast, shaky. "They'll catch us," she whispered. "We can't outrun all of them." Raven's hand rested on her shoulder. "Outrunning isn't the plan. Outsmarting is." She pulled a small device from her jacket. The disguised emergency kit Sterling had slipped her. She activated a beacon, but instead of broadcasting location, it scrambled signals within a 50-meter radius. Instantly, the radios outside crackled with static. Confusion spread through the patrols. Willow stared. "You've done this before, too many times." Raven's eyes met hers, shadowed with unspoken history. "And every time I told myself it would be the last." The footsteps outside grew frantic. The search widened, disoriented. Raven seized the moment. "Now," she hissed, pulling Willow into the dark again. They darted across the grounds, slipping through blind spots created by the scramble. But as they reached the chapel steps, a flare burst overhead, bathing the campus in harsh red light. And there, at the top of the steps, stood Meadow and Chadwick, cornered by two intruders with weapons raised. Raven's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to act, but she froze, torn between the operative's cold logic, protect the evidence, keep Willow moving, and the human bond she'd built with those two. Willow's whisper cut through her paralysis. "We can't just leave them." Raven's hands clenched into fists. The mission said move. The girl in her heart said stay. For the first time in years, Raven felt the fracture split wide open. Her next step would decide not only the mission, but who she was willing to be. What price does loyalty demand when it collides with survival? Raven asked herself that as she froze on the chapel steps, the flare's red light washing over marble and stone like spilled blood. Meadow and Chadwick stood cornered at the top, their faces pale, eyes wide. The intruders leveled weapons at them, efficient, clinical, already choosing which cadets lived and which did not. Beside her, Willow's whisper broke the stillness. "We can't leave them." Raven's pulse thundered in her ears. Iron Wolf training had drilled it into her. Protect the mission, protect the evidence, sacrifice anything else. Operatives weren't supposed to hesitate, but these weren't assets or obstacles. They were cadets, students, kids who had trusted her without knowing the truth. She moved. "Stay here," she hissed to Willow, sliding into the shadows. Before the gunmen could fire, Raven emerged from the darkness like a phantom. Her hand clamped down on the first intruder's wrist, twisting sharply. The weapon clattered across the stone. The second turned, startled, but Raven was already inside his guard, striking low, unbalancing him. The fight was brutal fast. Not a sparring match, not a drill. This was survival. She moved with precision, every strike and counter a language of violence learned in deserts and alleyways far from any academy classroom. When it was over, both intruders lay unconscious, disarmed. The flare burned out above them, leaving only the moonlight. Chadwick stared at her, breath ragged. That wasn't cadet training. Meadow's voice shook. "Who are you?" Raven looked at them both, her chest rising and falling. For once, she didn't try to hide it. Someone who was sent here to make sure threats like this never reached you. Someone who failed to keep her cover intact. The words hung heavy, final. Chadwick swallowed hard. So everything, the knots, the rescue, the drills, it wasn't just natural talent. It was necessity, Raven said. "I wasn't here to compete with you. I was here to protect you, whether you liked me or not." Silence stretched. For the first time, they saw her not as the quiet scholarship cadet, but as something else entirely. Meadow's eyes softened. "Then you saved us twice tonight." Raven turned, beckoning Willow forward. "We don't have time for explanations. The network won't stay scrambled. We move." They descended the chapel steps, but already the academy echoed with more boots, more voices, more lights cutting through fog. The net was closing. "Safe contact," Raven muttered, pulling the folded paper Fairfax had given her. She checked the coordinates. "East Pier. If we reach it, we have a chance." They sprinted across open ground, darting from shadow to shadow, every second stretched thin with risk. Alarms wailed. Floodlights cut arcs across the bay. "Down," Raven ordered, dragging them behind a stone wall as a patrol swept past. Chadwick's face was pale, but his voice carried resolve. "If we get out of this, you'll have my loyalty. I don't care where you came from." Raven almost smiled, but it was fleeting. Don't make promises in the middle of fire. Make them when it's over. The East Pier loomed ahead, dark against the moonlit water. A small boat rocked gently at its end. Hope surged. But as they reached the pier, a lone figure stepped into view. Tall, crisp uniform, Commander Thorne Sterling. His voice carried across the water. "You weren't supposed to draw this much heat, Iron Wolf." The cadets froze. Willow's grip on the tablet tightened. Meadow whispered, "He knows you." Raven's eyes narrowed. "Sterling, you're the safe contact." He gave a humorless smile. "Depends on how you define safe. My orders were to contain this operation, not escalate it. But now, you've involved half the cadet wing and exposed assets years in the making." Her heart sank. "You're saying you knew about the infiltration?" "I knew enough to manage it," he said coldly. "Control is better than chaos. Letting it play out gave us reach, influence, and you," he shook his head, "you weren't supposed to care about them." Willow's voice broke, trembling. "You're part of it." Sterling's eyes softened just for a moment. "I'm part of keeping the bigger picture from burning. Sacrifices have to be made. You cadets were always pawns." Raven's jaw clenched. Every muscle burned with betrayal. She trusted him, trusted that he represented the mission, the line between order and collapse, but his words cut through her like ice. "You want the evidence," she said flatly. He extended a hand. "Give me the drives, I'll make sure the story ends quietly. No academy destroyed, no cadets ruined, just silence." Meadow shook her head fiercely. "That's not justice." Chadwick's voice cracked. "And that's not honor." Willow's hand trembled as she held the tablet closer to her chest. "If you take this, you bury the truth forever." Raven looked at Sterling, then at the cadets around her, their faces scared but defiant, unbroken despite everything. Inside, her old training warred with something deeper. Iron Wolf demanded obedience. But Raven, the girl who had once stood small and invisible in her first day at Meridian, demanded something else. She stepped forward, her voice quiet but lethal. "No." Sterling's smile vanished. "Think carefully. You're not just burning me. You're burning the entire apparatus that keeps enemies from tearing this country apart." Raven's voice cracked, but her conviction held. If protecting the country means sacrificing its soul, then it isn't protection anymore. It's surrender. The silence stretched. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Sterling's expression hardened. His hand moved toward his sidearm. And in that instant, Raven knew there was no turning back. Her next move would decide everything. The mission, the evidence, the cadets who had chosen to stand with her. And whether she would live as Iron Wolf or die as Raven Claremont. Why do betrayals cut deeper than bullets? Raven asked herself that as Sterling's hand hovered over his weapon, the pier beneath them groaning with the rhythm of the tide. Willow, Meadow, and Chadwick stood frozen behind her, their breaths sharp, their eyes locked on the man who just stripped away the last illusion of trust. Raven's own body hummed with the old training, muscle memory, cold reflex, years of preparation whispering the path. Strike first, neutralize, secure. Iron Wolf had always demanded speed over hesitation. But the girl who had come here as just a cadet, who had felt the sting of being dismissed and overlooked, now carried something Iron Wolf never accounted for: attachment, humanity. Sterling's voice cut the night. "You think they'll thank you for this? You expose the corruption and this academy collapses. Futures ruined, traditions burned, enemies emboldened. You'll carry that weight." Raven's grip tightened on the encrypted drive in her pocket. Better to carry the truth than live with silence. He drew the weapon, smooth, decisive. But Raven was already moving. She dropped low, the shot tearing through air where her head had been. Her shoulder slammed into his ribs, knocking him back. The pistol skittered across the pier, clanging against the wood. Sterling recovered fast, too fast. His fist cracked against her jaw, white sparks exploding behind her eyes. The cadets shouted, but she blocked them out. The world narrowed to Sterling, mentor turned predator, ally turned threat. He struck again, but this time she caught his arm, twisted, forced him back against a piling. The old strength surged through her, but this wasn't just a mission anymore. This was every betrayal, every silence, every sneer that told her she wasn't enough. "You taught me to bury my conscience," she hissed, pressing him harder against the wood. But that was your weakness, not mine. He wrenched free, shoving her back, drawing a hidden blade from his belt. The steel glinted in the moonlight. Conscience doesn't win wars, Raven. Wolves don't ask permission to survive. She steadied her stance, her breath ragged. Then maybe it's time the wolf learned what it means to be human. The fight blurred, blade slashing, Raven deflecting with the stripped pier railing she'd grabbed, wood clashing against steel. Each strike shook the dock, echoes carrying across the dark water. Behind her, Meadow whispered a prayer. Chadwick tightened his grip on the baton he'd taken. Willow's hands hovered, terrified but unwilling to flee. Sterling lunged, blade slicing toward Raven's ribs. She pivoted, the tip grazing fabric but not flesh. Her counterstrike drove the railing into his wrist, the blade spinning into the night. Disarmed but not defeated, he swung with brute force, knocking her hard against the piling. Pain burst in her shoulder. The encrypted drive nearly slipped from her pocket. "You can't win," Sterling snarled, pressing close. "The system is bigger than you. It will bury you just like it buries every cadet who thinks they matter." Raven's vision swam, her body screaming in protest. But through the haze she saw Willow's terrified face, Meadow's clenched fists, Chadwick trembling but standing his ground. And she realized this wasn't just her fight anymore. With a roar, she drove her knee into Sterling's gut, forcing space between them. Her hand shot out, seizing the old combat knife still strapped at his ankle. In one fluid motion, she reversed the grip and pressed the blade against his throat. The pier fell silent, even the tide seemed to pause. Sterling's chest rose and fell under the blade's edge. For the first time, his composure cracked. "Do it, then. Be what they trained you to be." Raven's hand trembled. Every instinct screamed to finish it, to erase the threat, to seal the mission. But another voice rose inside her, the one that remembered her first day at the academy, walking alone past proud families, mocked by Chadwick, dismissed by everyone who saw only a farmer's daughter. The voice that remembered dignity, silence, endurance. Slowly she lowered the blade. "No," she said, her voice low but steady. "Killing you proves nothing. Exposing you proves everything." She tossed the knife into the bay, the splash echoing like a judgment. Sterling stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Raven answered, "but at least I'll regret it as myself." Security lights flared at the end of the pier. Captain Cross strode forward, flanked by true Academy officers, not infiltrators, not conspirators. Blackstone walked beside him, bruised but unbroken, freed from whatever attempt had sought to silence her. "Stand down," Cross ordered, his voice booming. Sterling's expression flickered, calculation, then defeat. The game was over. Cross's eyes found Raven. "Cadet Claremont, or whoever you really are, you have a lot to answer for." Raven straightened, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Then I'll answer, but not until you see this." She handed Willow's tablet forward. Willow stepped into the light, her voice trembling but clear. "It's all here. The falsified scholarships, the altered evaluations, the names of those planted to be controlled." Cross took it, his stern face tightening as he scanned the files. Blackstone's eyes widened with each line. This is treason," Cross whispered. Sterling's voice dripped venom. "It's survival." Cross turned on him, fury burning. "No, it's rot, and it ends tonight." Security restrained Sterling, dragging him back toward the campus. For a long moment, silence stretched on the pier. The cadets stood in a ragged line, Meadow, Chadwick, Willow, faces pale but unbroken. Cross studied them, then Raven. "You saved lives tonight, but you also shattered trust. Who you are, what you are, that will take time to reconcile." Raven nodded. "I never wanted to be a symbol. I just didn't want the truth buried." Blackstone stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Sometimes that's enough." The dawn broke pale over Chesapeake Bay. The Academy grounds, battered and bruised, stood in its first fragile light of reckoning. Raven sat on the seawall watching the horizon. Willow joined her, silent for a time. "Do you regret not killing him?" Willow finally asked. Raven's eyes stayed on the water. "I regret too many things already, but not that. Dignity doesn't need to scream, it just needs to endure." The younger cadet's hand brushed hers, uncertain, seeking. Raven let it stay. Behind them the bell tolled once, the sound carrying across the campus. Not a warning this time, but something else. A beginning. And as the sun rose, Raven knew. She might forever be Iron Wolf in the shadows, but here, at Meridian, she had been more. She had been Raven Claremont. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.